Jacob suffered from multiple sclerosis, a disease which his partner said hovers dark and damp, like fret on a void day, threatening to disrupt another evening, another holiday. So when he developed a headache that was like a knife running from the top of your skull into the back of your neck, followed by a seizure which resulted in him becoming silent, staring, refusing to communicate, the natural conclusion was that he was suffering another MS relapse. Jacob's condition worsened as he slipped in and out of consciousness as if he was shutting down. His partner, Abi Morgan, wrote that he developed schizophrenic and shape-shifting changes in his personality. Narrating the evolution of his illness in her brilliant book titled This Is Not a Pity Memoir, Morgan wrote that Jacob had been started on an experimental treatment for his MS before this catastrophic event. But this episode turned out not to be an MS relapse, but a reaction to the trial medication manifesting as autoimmune encephalitis. Hello, I'm Ibrahim Imam and welcome to this episode of the Neurology Lounge podcast. In this episode, we shall be looking into encephalitis, focusing on the autoimmune type, but also looking at other forms of encephalitis. The cause of Jacob's autoimmune encephalitis were antibodies that targeted the NMDA receptor, and it is therefore called anti-NMDAR autoimmune encephalitis. The quintessential memoir of anti-NMDAR encephalitis is that written by journalist Susannah Cahalan titled Brain on Fire. Cahalan's illness began rather innocuously with forgetfulness at work and what she called a sudden instinct to purge her files. She was then plagued by a variety of mental symptoms such as irrational jealousy, leading her to harbor an overpowering thought to read her partner's emails. More worryingly, she went on to develop hallucinations, initially seeing front page headlines contracting and expanding and closing in on her. She added that the pages were breathing visibly, inhaling and exhaling all around her. She also felt as if her perspective had narrowed, as if she was looking down the hallway through a viewfinder. Her behavior then became increasingly erratic, with rambling speech, fluctuating moods, odd doodles, out-of-body experience, talking a mile a minute, and inexplicable crying and laughing spells. She said, I couldn't stay with one thought. My mind was flooded with different desires, but especially the urge to escape. She also developed a change in her personality, writing about how all the personality traits she valued, patience, kindness, and courteousness, evaporated. It is not surprising that Cahalan was initially labeled with a variety of psychiatric diagnoses, from bipolar disorder and alcoholism to schizoaffective disorder and psychosis. And to cement the psychiatric elements of her presentation was when she manifested with Capgras syndrome, the delusion that closed people have been replaced by imposters. It was only later in the course of her illness that non-psychiatric diagnoses were given any serious consideration. And this was when she manifested such symptoms as slurred speech, drooling, constant chewing motions, and weird grimaces. Whilst anti-NMDAR is one of the most frequent causes of autoimmune encephalitis, it is just one of a growing list of antibodies generated by the body that cause devastating damage to the brain. Top amongst these are antibodies to LGI1, Caspar2, AMPA, DPPX, GAD65, mGlu-R5, GFAP, Iglon5, MOG, and MA2. But not everyone with autoimmune encephalitis has a specific antibody detected as the cause. This is the case of Jackie Stebbins, a lawyer who wrote about her illness in a memoir titled Unwillable. Her illness started following an episode of influenza, which she said morphed into a sinus infection. Shortly after, she developed uncharacteristic anxiety and nervousness, followed by a protracted period of sleepless nights, struggling to go to sleep and then waking up early. She wrote that white noise blared in my ears in a constant loop, and exhaustion depleted my spirit and my being. A year after the onset of her illness, her anxiety had exacerbated and she was experiencing strange thoughts. Her insomnia had also worsened, and she remarked that I was incredulous at my body's unwillingness to nod off since I was exhausted. And for a month, she manifested unusual behavior, tearfulness, hallucinations, and sleepwalking. She said, for months I lay at the threshold of hell as the devil himself stood over me. After she suffered a seizure during sleep, she was admitted to hospital where she was diagnosed as seronegative autoimmune encephalitis. This is autoimmune encephalitis without any antibodies detected. Stebbins' illness story reflects the diversity of symptoms and signs that can accompany autoimmune encephalitis. Beyond these already mentioned, autoimmune encephalitis can manifest with a bewildering array of movement disorders such as ataxia, chorea, dystonia, myoclonus, Parkinsonism, rigidity, tics, tremor, spasms, and stereotypies. As we have seen, it can also present with psychiatric symptoms such as psychosis, agitation, mania, aggression, irritability, and mood lability. Other symptoms include cognitive impairment, myopathy, dysautonomia, cranial nerve dysfunction, myasthenia, pain, and gait impairment. Amongst its features, some are regarded as red flag symptoms, and these include orofacial chorea and dyskinesias, which are abnormal movements mainly around the face, faciobrachial dystonia, autonomic instability, and intractable seizures. The diagnosis of autoimmune encephalitis is complicated by the myriad of diseases that can mimic it. And perhaps at the top of the list are psychiatric disorders from schizophrenia and bipolar disorder to anxiety and depression. The difficulty of distinguishing autoimmune encephalitis from a psychiatric illness is vividly portrayed by the case of 30-year-old IT consultant Ross, whose story was narrated in the book Life After Encephalitis, written by Ava Easton. Starting at a time when he was incredibly busy with work, he first felt tired, stressed, and generally feeling under the weather. He was initially treated with antibiotics, a steroid cream, and anti-sickness medications, although his blood tests were all normal. He subsequently began manifesting features of anxiety, worrying about having a heart attack, of being hit by cars, and of getting lost, and eventually going into an absolute panic and feeling suicidal. His condition deteriorating, he was admitted to hospital where again his tests, including a chest x-ray and a CT head scan, were normal. He was prescribed an antipsychotic medication, which he said at least controlled things. But only temporarily, and with life turning very dark, he eventually attempted suicide. Considered high risk for further suicide, he was admitted to a high security hospital where he stayed for 7 whole weeks. His fortunes, however, turned when he was referred to a general hospital to have assessments for snoring and for excessive daytime sleepiness. It was the sleep specialist there who, he said, looked at me in a new way, in a way other doctors hadn't. He said, I owe him a lot, probably my life. On the specialist's advice, his mental health medications were stopped and he was referred on to a neurologist. And he said, after nearly a month with no answer, the test for anti-NMDA receptor encephalitis returned positive. He remarked that my brain was seriously unwell. Another major mimic of autoimmune encephalitis is viral encephalitis. Although the top suspect in this case is herpes simplex virus type 1, almost any other virus can infect the brain in a similar way. An example of this is the illness story narrated by 30-year-old Sophie Bourne, also in the book Life After Encephalitis. She was 28 years old when she said she felt unwell, like I was coming down with a cold. She then developed repeated generalized convulsions, for which she was taken to hospital and eventually admitted to the intensive care unit on account of uncontrollable seizures. She remained unconscious for several days whilst doctors tried to make a diagnosis. She said a lumbar puncture and every kind of test possible only revealed inconclusive findings. Her doctors nevertheless suspected viral encephalitis based on her presentation and treated her accordingly. Beyond psychiatric illnesses and viral encephalitis, there's a long list of other mimics of autoimmune encephalitis. These include infections such as Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease or CJD, autoimmune diseases such as acute disseminated encephalomyelitis or ADEM, Susannah syndrome, and Hashimoto encephalopathy. Neurodegenerative disorders such as Alzheimer's disease, frontotemporal dementia, and Lewy body disease can also mimic autoimmune encephalitis, as can brain tumors. Besides MRI brain scans, spinal fluid analysis, and autoimmune blood tests, the investigations of autoimmune encephalitis include an electroencephalogram and, as in Cahalan's case, a brain biopsy. Both Cahalan and Stebbins also had scans to look for the presence of tumors which can be associated with anti-NMDAR autoimmune encephalitis, the most frequent being an ovarian teratoma. The cancer screening tests Stebbins had were a mammogram, a CT scan of the body, and a PET scan. Cahalan and Jacob required what Cahalan referred to as a three-pronged attack of treatments, which consisted of steroids, IVIG, and plasmapheresis. Jacob was also successfully given a trial of bortezomib when the conventional treatments failed. Other drugs that can be used in these situations include rituximab, tocilizumab, and anakinra. Symptomatic treatments of autoimmune encephalitis may be indicated, such as those to improve sleep, control seizures, and manage movement disorders. Unfortunately, even after effective treatments are given, the outcome of autoimmune encephalitis is not always a good one. Such was the case with 5-year-old Yehuda, diagnosed with seronegative autoimmune encephalitis and treated with powerful immunosuppressants. Yehuda's story was narrated by his mother, Rebecca Jablon, in the memoir titled To Add a Miracle. Jablon wrote of the deficits that trailed Yehuda after his treatments. She said, Yehuda has not regained his ability to speak fluently in 2 languages. He often still speaks in 1 or 2 word phrases. He has not regained his ability to identify the Hebrew letters and to master early reading. Furthermore, she said, he has not regained his ability to copy more complex sentences or pictures, and he has not regained the ability to fully play an interactive game with a friend. After months of treatments, Yehuda also suffered with lack of energy, tending to fall asleep in school, and significant loss of appetite and weight loss. To explore encephalitis further, I will be speaking to Michael Lemonick, author of the illness memoir titled The Perpetual Now. Thank you very much for watching or listening to this podcast. If you found it enlightening, why not click on the like button or subscribe to the Spotify or YouTube channel so that you don't miss the next episode. And whilst waiting for that, why not explore my book, Surfing the Brain, or check my website called Neuro Checklist. Thank you very much for your time.